Welcome to the New Commons. I'm Johanna Laurie, and my guest today is Rosie Carey. And I wonder if some or a lot of our viewers here know you, because Rosie is a native of Keene, and she's lived here for many years, gone away and come back, and now she's lived here at least since when?
2013.
2013, yeah. And she has a healing center in Keene, which many of you may have visited, called the Life Light Center, is that right?
That's right.
On Washington Street. And if you haven't been there, you've probably seen her articles in the in the Shopper News. That's how I have gotten familiar with Rosie. She writes articles rather frequently, and they're always interesting. And
Thank you.
and I never fail to read them. So, and it's always about subjects that interest me. And the reason I invited her was that I've been for quite a long time hoping to meet her. So this gives me an opportunity to do that. And also that I read an article that she wrote back in December. And that article was called Transformation. It was in the December 24th to 30th Shopper News. And she said something in that article that just really, I really resonated with. She said that the light and love and essence of each of our hearts will open to build a world of harmony, unity, and manifest peace. And I was thinking that as we come into the new year, of course, I, like everybody else, is thinking, what can I do that's better? How can we make the world a better place? And I was thinking this really speaks to that if in our hearts we hold peace, there is an opportunity really to create peace in the world. So I thought January is the time to have Rosie come and talk to us. Because she is on this journey and has been on this journey for some time. And so I wanted to say a little bit about her background, and I want her to just chime right in. My understanding from the biographical information she sent me is that she's had a traditional education here in Keene. You said that you got a Bachelor of Science, is that right?
Yes.
Were you originally headed in a scientific direction?
I was going to be a solar engineer.
My goodness.
Right.
Well, and did you decide early on that wasn't going to be your calling? Or?
I think the universe decided it for me.
Oh.
It wasn't going to happen. Yeah, I had applied to the University of Southern California at Santa Cruz and had traveled there and was accepted, of course, but when I got there, realized it was an overwhelming situation for my 8-year-old daughter.
Oh.
Who at the time would have to go to public school,
Yeah.
and it was quite violent. She would have to learn to carry a knife.
Oh,
and
my
use it.
goodness.
And I just said,
Oh.
no education is worth
No, yeah.
what this will do.
Okay. So
So
you
that-
went and came back.
I came back,
Oh.
and then I went back to Keene State and said,
Yeah.
okay, what can I do?
Yeah.
And Bachelor of Science seemed to be the thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also did a work study in costume design there, and worked in the theater for 3 years. I think.
So you pretty quickly went from science to something else, right? That's right. Yeah.
I felt I
Yeah.
just needed a degree.
Yeah.
I wanted to move forward.
Okay.
So that's
yeah.
the way I did it.
Yeah. Well, you're a single mom with
Right.
with an 8-year-old. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. So and you have written in another article about you called Potential about what it was like to be what it was like to be a costume designer.
Right.
That was something you really did resonate with. And
I did,
Yeah,
and at the
yeah.
time it was transforming for me. You know, expressing myself through theater, creating my vision on stage, and working with the emotions that you could project through the costumes to the audience, and that interplay was fascinating for me. How you shape. You've got the written material, you've got the actors, and then you've got all the visuals.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it was
mhm.
fun.
Yeah. So, and you did what, about 4 or 5 years?
3 years
Just
there.
3 years there, yeah. And then what sort of got you going in another direction then?
Life.
Life.
Yes. I was married to a man who had back issues, and severe. And I took him to someone who was visiting the area, who was from the Philippines, a Filipino faith healer.
Oh.
And that changed my life. It also healed his back, but what I saw was incredible. You know, the man never touched my husband, and my husband stood up, and it to me seemed like a miracle. You know, how does that happen? And that hooked me. Then I wanted to know why.
Yeah.
How does that occur? Right.
So did you then start studying that around here, or did you go elsewhere to do that?
I started studying with this man who was here for the summer, and then I went to the Philippines and studied with him for a few months. And when I returned, I had to create a new plan for myself. And it ended in divorce with my husband. I went to Arizona. I studied with various psychologists and medicine people and Native Americans, and learned a lot about energy. I went to the Sundance for 4 years, not as a dancer, but as a supporter. And that's a pretty amazing ceremony to witness.
Tell us about that a little bit.
It's considered one of the high ceremonies of the Lakota people, and I went to the Rosebud Reservation. It is a sacred event. People dance 4 days, the participants dance 4 days, and go through various purifying rituals, sweat lodge, and give flesh offerings, tiny bits of flesh from their arms usually, and are attached to the center tree of life, with ropes, and the ropes go through skewers either in their chest for the men or often skewers in the arms. And it is a connection. It's symbolic, and it's an energy building ceremony that unites people. But this giving of yourself in that way for 4 days, standing in the sun, dancing to the drums, right? It alters your mind, your consciousness. And people have visions, and people have profound healing, and energy is built for the creation of people's dreams, I guess you could say. I believe it was the center of the universe when I went. It was the center of the universe to me. It was coming into the heart of self and community in such a way that the unity of that went out from there as the dancers came out of the circle into the community, to the people. They all came out and shook hands with everyone who was present. And one of the years, I felt such a transfer of energy to me that it altered me profoundly. Sacred ceremonies, rituals of this nature are a part of our expansion in consciousness, the way we transform ourselves. And there are a lot of ways you can break it down and say, well, this is how that happened and whatever, but it's for the native Lakota people, it is a long-standing tradition.
And only certain people do this, or do the dance itself?
Well, the native people do this. There are some white people that have been invited and do choose to do it. But shortly after I went to the Rosebud, they closed that ceremony to all non-natives.
Yeah.
Which is understandable.
Yeah. Well, it actually, as you talk about it, I've heard about it before, and my feeling, I mean, and not in that particular place, I guess, but that it was, and my feeling was always that, I guess, fear that the nature of this, that people have to do this to themselves to have this kind of an experience. And I thought, gee, I couldn't relate to it as a...
Right. And that's what most people's reaction is.
Yeah.
It's not within their mindset.
Yeah.
If you're not raised native or in connection with the land or creator in that way, it feels barbaric.
Yeah, that's it.
And it does inspire fear in people.
Yeah, yeah. And of course you hear of lots of barbaric rituals other places, and it's very hard to relate to them if you're not in it, as you say. But you just coming as an outsider and watching, and it was enough to have you feel like this was not barbaric and this was sacred.
I had an introduction
Yeah.
somewhat to Native practices, and I was supporting a woman who was Native, and I was caring for her infant child during that time. I felt very much a part of it and was very accepted by everyone there as a part of it. And I had a man who had come here to New Hampshire. He actually studied in Amherst for a while, George Whirlwind Soldier. And he had introduced me to the Sweat Lodge, and I had done sweat at my house for a while. So I had some understanding of it. And I met his mother, George's mother, Evelyn, at, she lived on the Rosebud. So I had a grandmother there that also was sharing her knowledge and the presence that she brought to it. Right. And it's a very warm, heart-loving community. Just people were very focused on the peace that this generated, and it was their high ceremony. And these dancers were creating the energy for the survival of the people into the future.
That's different from when reading about it from people who don't really understand the ceremony. It makes it seem, which I think is how I've heard about it and seen about it, that makes you feel as if that this is something that warriors are preparing themselves with to be strong in battle. And that's it in terms of nothing is what you're saying as to what it does for the community or what it does, except that it might make them feel, well, we have to be strong too, And of course, the Native people here in America have suffered a great deal over the centuries, both before we arrived and
after. A lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah,
yes.
and so they understand suffering. They understand that it happens and that it's necessary at times, and that all this. So
well, I think we all understand it's necessary at times, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's not the focus of this ceremony.
But that's not the focus. It's interesting to know that.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
The focus of this ceremony is the vision, the love and the peace, and reaching the inner self. It is a transcendental experience, and it is that for all of the people that go. All of us who sat in the arbor, focusing our energy and our attention toward the dancers, received out from them blessings. In fact, they do a healing part of the third day, I think, is where they come with feathers and will touch you with their feather, and that is a healing ceremony that the dancers will do. And a lot of healing does happen. Right? So that was part of my searching for what is healing, what is transformation.
So, and then there must have been lots of other places that you found, or other people, other teachers, then, too. Yeah. Do you want to mention any of those?
Sure. I went to, when I was in Arizona, I met a man, C.J. White Deer, who was a primary teacher of mine. He's a Cherokee medicine elder, and he sees aura on humans and horses. And he's a very gifted person, one of two shaman, I guess you would call, priests, white priests. He's the white priest of the Cherokee Nation currently. And taught me for a number of years, along with others. It wasn't private lessons, but I did study with him, and taught me a lot about the human energy system, the chakras, the frequency, the vibration, how things break, how you put them back together, how my hands are the instruments I use to work with other people. So scientific principles and esoteric principles of,
Mhm.
of the human energy system.
Mhm.
And they work.
Yes, I I have my own experience with that just with working with muscle testing.
Right?
Which you can't really explain in a so-called scientific sense, but it works.
Yes.
It really works, and you really feel your connection with the person who's testing you, and they
Yes.
with you, and that's how that's how that happens. Yeah, and so you mentioned earlier that you had an experience earlier putting your hands on someone and them being healed in some way. So you feel like you've always had that ability, or
I think I've
Yeah.
had an ability
Yeah.
when I studied with a man from the Philippines, and I asked him about
Yeah.
my level of gift, and he said, "Oh, you've got a little bit. If you work really hard, you can maybe do something."
yeah, yeah,
But I'm not a phenomenal healer. I have just devoted a lot of time and effort to it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard people say that we all have this gift, some more than others.
Yes.
But I mean that it's something we can cultivate and something we, if we're really interested in, and that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me because, as I say, I've begun to really to feel more of these energetic connections with other people, with my place and where I am in life, with lots of things. Yeah. So, and what would you say then? So your focus now is you have a private practice,
Yes.
and you work with energy healing with individuals.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's. I started as a massage therapist.
Yeah.
Got a license.
Yeah.
Did many years of that,
Yeah.
and it's built into now where I work more specifically with the structure, the human structure, because I find that energy blockages occur after trauma or with aging
Mhm.
throughout the spine, the
Mhm.
joints.
Mhm.
So clearing and aligning the joints tends to get the flow back in the body.
Mhm.
Right. So 7 primary chakras, energy centers in the body, and lots of little sub-chakras at the joints and in various places that move energy into the primary chakras. So this is the Cherokee wisdom that came from C.J. White here, how to create flow through movement. And I've kind of expanded it into structural realignment.
Mhm.
Got arthritis, can't really do massage anymore.
Yes, arthritis is one of the.
But I still have a passion to do healing work. So,
Mm,
you know,
mhm.
I've got 30 years
Mhm.
at this. I'm still doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of your more recent articles, you talked also about reaching people beyond who are.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and is this new, or is that something you've been doing for a while
It's,
too?
it's something that has come about in the past 10 years or so.
Uh-huh.
And I do.
How did you come to that?
I don't know the
You
first
don't know.
time that happened, but yeah, I think that more frequently what I see is that people will come in with energy forms attached into their aura. And in my clearing their field, you've got some categories of negativity, or perhaps an elemental or a discarnate or an entity, or so I find that the discarnates are really people who have died. And these are not negative influences, but they will attach into people because they really see the light around you, and they think you can help. They are looking maybe to transcend. When people die, they don't always magically go to the light, is what I find. They linger, and for whatever reason, they want to talk with loved ones, or they have unfinished business, or they died really suddenly and they're confused. But so they find light, and sometimes that's you they find. And so then you come in to see me, and I go, oh, look at that, 2 consciousnesses in one body. That's not right. You know? And I have learned to transcend the soul of those people into the light. I'll call for angels and assistance to move them through what is a vortex of energy that forms around me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that opened me into, I think, a greater sensitivity for being able to go to people's houses and find spirits in houses. And it's the same. It's usually people who have died, and there they are, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it connects very much as far as I, having not personally experienced that part, and I might still, I don't know. It connects for me to the notion that we aren't all that we are right here. We have to have come from somewhere, and we are going somewhere, and we have these relationships that are here for whatever reason. I've been doing quite a bit of study of Rudolf Steiner because my children went to the Steiner school, and I, a long time ago, got interested in. As I get older now, I find that he's one of the people who is very good at explaining what's happening, and I feel like it makes sense to me in a way that it didn't before. Maybe it's also because I'm getting toward transitioning myself, and in a sense I'm preparing myself. I'm saying, well, I've got to be, may not have much time left, and I have to be the best me that I can, and try to go out in the most graceful way that I can. So, and with that sort of foremost in my mind, I realized that it's much, it seems likely to me now in a way that maybe it didn't before, that there's a whole lot more out there that we're not familiar with in our day-to-day life, which influences us, and whether it's spirits of people who've passed, or whether it's who knows what all, or energies that coming from other places. Yeah.
Well, it's my thought that you're mentioning aging, that we have cycles of transformation in our lives. The first 20 years or so are all about learning about the earth and how to survive on the earth, and then the next is all about relationship with a partner, your family, having children. But the 50 on years are about spiritual understanding and understanding your own consciousness, and we often feel like, well, we want to leave a mark in the world, and what would that be, and what have we accomplished with life, and that is all a spiritual desire to improve ourselves and give something back to the world.
Yes.
So those cycles motivate us to transform. So we have a vision of some sort that we want to bring in for ourselves or our children, or maybe it's just preserving an old house, right? So, but everybody has a level of what they'd like to give back, usually.
I think that's true.
And coming into an attunement with those forces that have guided us throughout our life to transform.
Well, I think, and it's everyone, I would think, wants to find meaning, what the meaning of their life is. Why am I here? What is my purpose here? And the longer you live, the more of it you can look back to, and as you say, try to figure out what it is that you've been doing all this time, why you've been doing it.
Yes.
And what's left for you still to do. What should you still do that you haven't done yet? In a number of your articles, you talk about how you can always, at any age, you can transform yourself. At any age, you can look to what it is that's you still undone, or that you might want to do, and the steps. You haven't go into some of the steps that you think a person should take to, if you're interested in transforming yourself, if you feel like, because what occurs to me is that, so transformation happens all the time.
It does.
We can't stop it.
Yes.
I mean, what's happening in nature is cyclical. It's every single year. It's, right. All that change. And then our own lives, we cannot stop, growing up and growing old and dying, and there's no way that we can actually stop that process. But so what we really can do is be is be conscious participants in that process,
Right.
more or less,
Right.
depending on what our ability and our interest is. But
And I feel that being a conscious participant, part of that means keeping your energy attuned,
mhm,
keeping that flow of energy moving through your body, through your chakras,
mhm,
feeding your consciousness, feeding your mind, and opening, working toward continually opening yourself to a higher.
And what do you suggest as far as steps to people who want to do that and don't know how, say?
Well, chakras you have 7 major ones, and each one has a prime directive, so to speak, they're going to function to gather information for you about your life. And first chakra is about survival, and second chakra is the emotional body and creative body. So
And which the
first
one
chakra is at the bottom of the spinal column,
okay,
halfway between the coccyx and the pubic bone,
okay,
and there it sits, it faces downward into the earth.
uh-huh.
So this is the chakra that pulls in earth energy primarily
Mm-hmm.
and feeds the system. So through the legs up into the first chakra, and it is fight or flight, fear,
Mm-hmm.
survival,
Mhm.
instinctual behavior, and it wants to be healthy.
Mm.
It's what keeps you healthy. It's chi, life force,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have that working well, you might want to see somebody about
Mm-hmm.
why that's not working well. And there are many reasons why, too many for me to go into, but various types of trauma will
Mhm.
break or damage this
Mhm.
chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And once the chakras get damaged, sometimes they reset, but sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Second chakra is a creative center. So creativity feeds well-being and health and creating beauty in your life.
And where's that located?
Second is
it?
right at the spleen. It's
Okay.
it's just to the left of the navel
Mm-hmm.
in your body. And interestingly enough, this is one of 2 chakras that I observe anyway that move in the body as you change, as you age, the heart being the other one.
Mm.
So the second chakra will start out often very high on the left side of your body, and then as you age, move down toward its original position, which is right in line with first chakra between first and the third chakra, which is at the navel.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of wonderful things happen as this second creative chakra comes into alignment for people, and a lot of change and awareness. And the way you nurture this center is through creative art acts.
Mhm.
Okay.
And you can actually feel this in somebody's body. in
I can
somebody's aura.
feel
You can feel this, yeah.
the flow of energy and the center, the vortex of the energy,
Mhm.
because I'm fairly kinesthetic, so
Mhm.
I'll search around till I get the middle of that chakra and can go,
Mhm.
there it is.
Mhm.
Right. And third is the ego, primarily.
Mhm.
And here, it's kind of the bullseye for whatever trauma comes into your body or stuff that gets thrown at you. It hits here. For whatever reason, it's the strongest target.
And where is it?
It's right at the navel.
Right at the navel.
And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
usually
Mhm.
fairly large.
Yeah.
And people with big egos have a bigger third chakra than others, and that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And incidentally, we've been living in this consciousness of third chakra for a long time.
Hmm.
And that's all about us
Mhm. Yeah.
and conquering and
Yeah.
acquiring,
Mhm.
taking that from you so I can have it, and
Mhm.
power. And
Mhm.
we've been living in this consciousness of the third chakra
Yeah. Mhm.
since civilization,
I was going to
recorded
say. Oh, really?
civilization
Okay. Yeah.
began. Right. It's been a long time,
Yeah,
transition.
yeah.
We're transitioning out of this
Yeah.
into the heart. And the heart is, of course, the heart center right in the middle of the chest, not directly over the physical heart, but
Mhm.
more
In the middle.
center.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned, this does move. Usually, our hearts in this culture are right about middle of the chest. But in other cultures, and even people who are more realized, they will move south a little bit in the body, so that they are meant to just peek out between the rib cage, just under the rib cage. So the heart is actually taking in more fully the energy that comes from you to me, and me giving to you. So the heart chakra feeds the compassion and the questing, the passion of our lives, the empathy, all of those heart chakra qualities that we are, I think, destined to embody as humans as we climb out of the ego and into a higher consciousness of who we are as divine beings in a body.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like, in terms of civilization, we're moving
I do.
into a period of when heart chakra will be more important?
I do. And this is interesting because our souls, it's my understanding, and from the teachers that I've studied with, our souls actually have resided in heart chakra. That this is the connecting in point, the indwelling of the divine being in the body, it's heart. And this has been this way for as long as our understanding of this has been. But I understand now that as we transition into this next phase of consciousness, transformation, world peace that we're coming into, the next great change in evolution of our species, that the soul will actually rise to dwell in the throat chakra. And when that happens, the consciousness, which has been ego-centered, will move into heart. So people are always asking me, how are we going to change what's going on in our world? It's desperate.
Yeah.
Well, we change it because we are changed. And as we change, it creates a spreading of this heart-centered energy that does go global.
I remember, it seemed, having lived as long as I've lived, there have been periods which seem more hopeful to me than right now.
Yes.
And I think back even like to the 70s, I believe, if I recall rightly, that there was very strong, powerful Buddhist influence in the world. And they were saying that if a certain number of Buddhas existed, there would be this change. And the Buddhas, of course, were everybody. Weren't just the people who've been practicing this all their lives. And so it was like a tipping point. And of course, it seems like we've come away from that. It seems like instead of that actually increasing and there being more Buddhas and there being more of this heart influence, that we've gone more and more back into the ego center that you say, where the fighting and the me first, and so obviously it isn't a straightforward kind of you can't expect to just keep going in that direction. Do you feel like it's that you can't have light without darkness? Do you feel it's that kind of a dichotomy, or do you feel like it's a cyclical thing where we have to go through periods of really all kinds of horrible backsliding sort of things to then get to another place, a better place?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think that historically we have done a lot of backsliding.
Yeah.
But I feel that we are at a point, we are at a tipping point in consciousness. We do have a critical mass of people that seem to have elevated their consciousness to the point where there is a collective understanding of where we're going and what we desire.
It would seem that, yeah. I think what strikes me is how the direction seems to be still going the wrong way. And there's a kind of an urgency about it,
Yes.
that the people who are pushing the other direction, and there are people who are really pushing, for more materiality. It seems like they're pushing for less consciousness of what they're doing. I mean, that's what appears to me. Maybe that isn't actually happening, but it's and then these tensions that come up, and the fact that we can't agree on anything, and that we have these camps, one camp and the other camp, and they each think that the other is wrong, and why do we have all this stuff going
let's
on?
Go back 5 years.
Yeah.
Let's just go back 5 years to 2020 when we had COVID come in.
Yeah.
I feel that this whole epidemic was part of teaching each individual how to be responsible for themselves and to others.
Mm-hmm.
That it was critical that we think about other people. We think about how we go out in public and what we do, and we're still dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
So people have lost loved ones, whole families have died.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an epidemic that has reached into every home and every heart.
Mm-hmm. Worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's quite a teacher, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It certainly is.
And we've had to learn how to be different in the world.
And I know personally that that's the one real gift I can say I've personally gotten from COVID, is that I banded together at that time with people who kind of agreed to me about what to do about it on a personal level, and I found that they came from all different backgrounds. So people that I normally wouldn't have run into, or people of other religions, people of other, it was quite incredible to me. I met a lot of new people I never would have met, because we were talking about this, and we were trying to help each other.
Yes.
And I would imagine that I'm not the only one who's had this experience. Lots of other people have had this experience.
Yeah,
so
sure.
to me, that was a positive about COVID. I mean, there are lots of things that are negative, and I feel are going to be ongoing negatives that we'll have to deal with. We just have to deal with in whatever way we feel is best. But this actually reaching out to other people and feeling like I could talk to people I never thought, that I could talk to before, and whether they were Republicans, Democrats, whatever, it didn't seem to matter. It didn't really matter, Right. As long as people were kind of on the same path of trying to get through this together and understand what was going on,
Right. One of the things I learned and saw other people learning was that what I do affects you.
Well, yeah.
And what you do affects me.
Yeah.
And not in just the physical plane. That was the immediate lesson.
Yeah.
That physically, what you do is going to affect me.
Yeah.
And that was the fear behind it. But climb out of that fear, and you could see that spiritually.
Yeah.
And even emotionally.
Yeah.
The pains and the sorrows that people went through. Mm-hmm. We all suffered in this. And we all came together to rise out of it and have a different consciousness about our families and our communities.
Well, because you were forced to see that that coming together was the only way. Staying apart in fear wasn't going to work.
Yes,
it just wasn't going to work at all.
Yeah. We found that as we were isolated in our homes.
That's right. Yeah. That's very true.
So there will be other lessons, hopefully not at this level, but I believe that these transformative cycles will elevate us into a greater understanding of who we are as individuals and how to go about transforming our lives and our world, so that we all can come into a greater understanding of the next 200 years, 2,000 years, right? Right. We were talking a little bit about Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius.
Yes,
which is the dawning of the age
I wanted
of
you to
Aquarius.
talk a little bit about that.
Yep.
If we still have time, and I'm not quite sure.
We don't have a timer.
We don't. No. Okay. Let's see here.
So Saturn and Jupiter were conjunct in Aquarius at the beginning of 2021, I believe it was. Forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm not really an astrologer. But what this means is that Aquarius is the air sign, and it's also personal. It's the personal transformative sign of the zodiac. And Jupiter is a very big planet. It's the biggest of all the planets, and it is big energy, big change, creativity on a large scale. Saturn is more of a slow-moving planet, which allows for people to work diligently and create discipline around their goals. So you've got these three factors coming together to transform the individual. It's not me just saying, okay, we're moving in from third world into fourth world because the native people say that's going to happen. Although I do put a lot of stock in how our cycles of transformation are tracked by the wisdom keepers. But you've also got the astrologers saying, okay, there's this big influence that's come in recently that's going to transform the individual as well. And I see it too. I see people more heart conscious than I've ever known them to be.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes,
we're experiencing several influences that come together to transform the individual and thus the society and the globe. That I think we're talking more than just the Native American wisdom keepers, the Tibetans, as you have mentioned, the Buddhists, have similar philosophy, and they feel that the more people that will elevate their consciousness, then the more chance we have of tipping that scale toward a mass shift in consciousness, which is the evolution of man.
Which is what should happen. Yeah.
We are evolving as a human. We are evolving as souls. As we evolve our consciousness, our souls will grow in consciousness. Our souls will transform. It's all a snowball effect.
It's all connected.
It is all connected. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think we have to end this conversation for today, but I do hope we'll pick it up and continue.
Okay.
This is perhaps the most important thing we can talk about.
Yes. I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
And that is about, we talk so much about the heart, but the act of bringing love into your life.
Yeah.
And that's through the heart. That is the primary function of the heart. So
Yeah.
bringing love into your life, your personal life, your families, and that of your community. You know, if you do nothing else, do that. Focus on your love.
You've written several good articles on that about how the importance of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I must say that personally, if I go back to what can I do every day, if I can remember the love I feel for everyone,
Exactly.
it makes such a difference.
It starts with us, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does.
How
Peace
we
starts
are.
with you. Love starts with you. It all starts with you. So,
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you so much, Rosie.
Thank you.
Good to talk with you.
Wonderful. Wonderful to be here.